Imagine standing on a green hillside in Greenland, the vastness of the land stretching out before you, ancient and wild. The air is crisp, and the sky above is a deep, endless blue. The wind is cold, biting at your face, carrying with it the scent of salt and earth. It whispers through the grass, hinting at stories long forgotten. Below, a deep blue fjord cuts through the land like a ribbon of glass, reflecting the towering mountains that guard its shores. All around is silence, broken only by the distant cry of a seabird. But this place was not always empty. Once, it echoed with the sounds of life, voices, laughter, the clatter of tools. Look closely. Faint shapes of stone walls mark the ruins of a farm, a church, a home. These stones are the last witnesses to a vanished world. People lived here for centuries, Norsemen, Vikings. They braved the unknown, sailing across icy seas to settle this distant land. They built lives on this remote edge of the world, raising families and forging communities in the shadow of the Arctic. They prayed, raised children, buried their dead, and then they vanished. Their voices faded, leaving only questions behind. No signs of battle, no mass graves, no last words carved in stone, just a quiet departure, as if the land itself swallowed them whole. They simply disappeared from history, leaving behind only the silent testimony of their abandoned homes. For nearly 500 years, a European society existed here, thriving against the odds. And then, in a blink, it was gone. When later Europeans returned, they found only silent ruins, empty longhouses, abandoned churches, and the haunting sense of absence. The people were gone, as if they had walked away and never looked back, leaving their world to the wind and the snow. The landscape is both beautiful and harsh, a place of contrasts. Lush meadows in summer, unforgiving ice in winter. Summers are short and bright. The land bursts into color, wildflowers blooming in the brief warmth. Winters, long and brutally cold, test the limits of endurance. The sun barely rises, and the world is locked in ice. To survive here required immense strength and skill, a deep knowledge of the land and the sea. The Norse were tough, farmers, hunters, shipbuilders. For generations, they succeeded. But something changed. Something went terribly wrong. The climate shifted, resources dwindled, and isolation grew. The silence in these fjords asks a question that has haunted historians. Where did they all go? What fate befell these settlers at the edge of the world? Walking among these stones, you can almost feel the ghosts of the past, sense the weight of their hopes and fears. You can picture smoke rising from a longhouse, hear children playing, cattle lowing, the rhythm of daily life echoing across the centuries. These were real people, with dreams, ambitions, and struggles not so different from our own. They were connected to a vibrant Viking world that stretched from North America to the Middle East, trading, exploring, and sharing ideas. Yet here, their story comes to a sudden and complete stop. The settlements fell silent, and the world moved on. Unraveling this mystery is not just about solving an old puzzle. It's about connecting with the lives that once filled these valleys. It's about understanding the delicate balance between a people, their culture, and the land they call home. A balance that can be lost in a single generation. It is a story of survival, struggle, and ultimately disappearance. A haunting reminder of how even the strongest societies can vanish, leaving only silent stones and unanswered questions behind. Our story begins in the windswept wilds of Iceland with Eric the Red, a classic Viking, strong, adventurous, and famously fiery-tempered. Eric was a man shaped by the harsh northern world, where survival demanded both courage and cunning. Exiled from Iceland for killing a man in a feud, Eric was forced to leave behind everything he knew. With little choice, he gathered his family and loyal followers, and sailed west into the unknown, braving the treacherous North Atlantic in search of a new home. What Eric found was a land of dramatic contrasts, an immense ice cap looming over the horizon, but also deep fjords, green meadows, and grassy slopes that came alive in the brief Arctic summer. It was a place both beautiful and forbidding. Eric saw opportunity where others saw only hardship. He imagined a place to build farms, raise animals, and carve out a new life for his people, far from the conflicts of Iceland. After 3 years of exploring and surviving in this strange new world, Eric returned to Iceland with a bold plan, to convince others to join him in settling this distant land. He cleverly named the new country Greenland, hoping the promise of fertile land would attract settlers. It was, in many ways, an early example of Viking marketing genius. Eric promised his fellow Icelanders a fresh start, a land where they could prosper, free from old feuds and crowded farms. In 985, 25 ships set sail from Iceland, loaded with hopeful settlers, livestock, and supplies. The journey was perilous. Only 14 ships survived the crossing, but those who made it were determined to begin anew. The Norse settlement of Greenland had begun, marking the start of a bold, new chapter in Viking history. The settlers established two main communities, the larger eastern settlement in the lush southern fjords, and the smaller western settlement further north, each with its own farms and homesteads. They chose the best spots at the ends of long fjords, where the climate was mildest and the land most fertile, maximizing their chances of survival. Homes were built from turf, stone, and driftwood, ingenious adaptations to a land with few trees but plenty of resourceful settlers. Farms were laid out just as they had been in Iceland and Norway, with fields, pastures, and communal spaces for gatherings and celebrations. The settlers brought with them their culture, laws, and religion, determined to create a new Norse society on the edge of the known world. For a while, Eric the Red's promise of a green and prosperous land seemed to come true. The Norse thrived in their new home, building a unique society that would endure for centuries, at least for a time. For over 3 centuries, the Greenland Norse did more than survive. They thrived. Against all odds, they carved out a unique society on the very edge of the Arctic, adapting to a land of extremes. At its peak, the population may have reached 5,000, spread across 2 main settlements and dozens of farms that dotted the fjords and valleys. They were farmers, raising cattle, sheep, and goats despite the short growing season and unpredictable weather. Every summer, families worked together to make the most of the brief warmth. Winters were long and harsh. Animals were fed with hay gathered in summer. Careful planning and hard labor were essential to keep livestock alive through the dark, frozen months. The animals provided milk, cheese, butter, and wool, the foundation of their society. These products not only fed and clothed the Norse, but also supported trade and local crafts. They were also hunters, especially of seals and walrus. Hunting expeditions were dangerous but vital, supplying meat, skins, and valuable resources. Walrus ivory was white gold in Europe, traded for iron, grain, and luxury goods. This trade connected Greenland to distant markets and brought rare items to Norse homes. This trade was their lifeline to Europe, ensuring access to tools, weapons, and even fine cloth that could not be made locally. They built stone churches, had a bishop, and followed European fashions. Religion and tradition remained central, linking them to the wider Christian world. Their farms show evidence of wealth, wooden furniture, imported pottery, and other goods that reveal a taste for comfort and status. Society was complex. Chieftains, farmers, tenants, and servants. Each person had a role, and social ties were reinforced through gatherings and feasts. They had laws, assemblies, and a strong Norse identity at the edge of the known world. The Thing Assembly was a place for justice, debate, and community decisions. The remains of their largest farms reveal a confident, well-established community, one that left a lasting mark on Greenland's history. The connection to Europe was everything, but by the 1300s, that link began to weaken. The voyage was long and dangerous, and as the climate cooled, sea ice became a greater hazard. Fewer ships made the journey. The last known ship sailed in 1410. After that, silence. The written record stopped. The Sagas End. For centuries, the fate of the Greenlanders was a mystery. In the 1700s, missionary Hans Egede arrived, hoping to find Norse descendants. Instead, he found only ruins, collapsed farms and churches, empty of Norse people. The land was inhabited by Inuit, but of the Europeans, there was no trace. The discovery of abandoned settlements deepened the mystery. There were no signs of war or violence. The society had simply withered and died. The last chapter of the Greenland Norse saga was missing. A major clue came from the ice itself. Scientists drilling Greenland's ice cap found evidence of dramatic climate change. The Norse arrived during the medieval warm period, when farming was possible. But around 1300, the Little Ice Age began, a period of global cooling. Summers grew shorter and cooler, winters longer and harsher. Less grass grew, so less hay could be gathered. Fewer animals survived the winter. The sea ice spread, making travel and hunting more dangerous. The vital walrus hunting grounds became almost unreachable. Trade with Europe became nearly impossible. The Norse world was freezing around them. Their farming model was failing. Each winter grew longer, each summer shorter. The cold was an invisible enemy, slowly pushing their society to the breaking point. How do we know the Norse were starving? The proof is in the bones. Archaeologists studied the rubbish heaps of Norse farms. Early on, they found many cattle and sheep bones, evidence of successful farming. As the climate cooled, seal bones dominated. By the 1400s, seals made up most of the diet. The Norse were turning from farmers into hunters, but it wasn't enough. In the final years, they ate newborn calves, split cattle bones for marrow, even killed their dogs. Human skeletons show signs of malnutrition and disease. The Norse did not just disappear, they slowly starved. The Norse were not alone. Around the same time the climate cooled, the Thule Inuit arrived from the north. Masters of Arctic survival, the Inuit had kayaks, dog sleds, and harpoons, perfect for hunting in the cold. Their homes and clothing were designed for warmth and efficiency. The Norse, by contrast, clung to European farming and needed wood, which was scarce. The Inuit lived with the cold. The Norse fought against it. As the Little Ice Age took hold, Inuit strategies thrived while Norse ones failed. The Norse did not adopt Inuit technology or ways. In the end, the Inuit survived. The Norse vanished. As the climate worsened, another crisis unfolded. The connection to Europe broke down. The Black Death and economic collapse hit Europe. Greenland became less important. Demand for walrus ivory fell as elephant ivory arrived from Africa and Asia. The Norse had less to trade for vital goods like iron. Archaeologists find evidence of desperate attempts to reuse old iron tools. The psychological impact was profound. No ships, no escape, no relief. The Norse were trapped, their world shrinking to failing farms and icy fjords. The loss of trade was the final blow. The Greenland Norse faced their fate alone. For years, the Greenland Norse story was seen as a tragedy of climate change, but new research shows they played a role in their own demise. They brought European farming to a fragile Arctic environment. To create pastures, they cut down sparse woodlands and overgrazed hillsides. This caused massive soil erosion and loss of fertility. The land could no longer support their farms. They were locked in a destructive cycle, unable to adapt. Their refusal to change, culturally and environmentally, sealed their fate. The silent ruins are not just a monument to a lost people, but a warning.